Hi there, it's Tim Wood from Compass Property Investing, and here today I'm with Josh Green, who's the Director of National Institute of Property Research. Research is something that's very vital to our company. We do our own research and we use externals. Tell us, Josh, about research. You know, there's a lot of research is just very clinical on the numbers, but you take a different approach. So tell me, how do you put your research together?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. NIPR was really brought about because I saw a gap in the research market where we have a lot of property research analysts and people that look at the numbers. There's a lot of free reports out there that you can get you vacancy rates and capital growth rates and all these different numbers. But what I found really interesting, coming from a documentary film background, was the story behind an area. And although I love the numbers and I love statistics, it's the story behind those numbers that's really important to me. And so from an investor, because I'm an investor myself as well, I want to know what kind of person is going to be renting my place and why they're renting it. So what jobs are they going to get? How are they going to get to their job? Do they have children? Are they going to be going to regular schools nearby, good schools? Is there parks and shopping and all the rest of it that people want around that property? So it's building a picture and a story around the property and the region that interests me from a research.
So you're really going into the why someone wants to be living in that area. Is it livable? Is it, as opposed to, is it a bauxite mine up in Weeper where you might have a lot of people living because of the heat and the conditions. It's got to be livable, and that's sort of it comes from your own heart and your research, and you blend that with the numbers, I take it.
Absolutely, yeah. Coming from Vancouver, Canada, it's a livable city, and I find Australia in a lot of places very livable.
So Josh, a lot of our clients will want to be, they ring up and they're interested, but they want to be close to the city, and they're convinced that that's where the growth is. You don't just recommend within a 20k radius of a city, because obviously you're getting above certain price points, but on the fringes of cities with these communities, is that, tell us a bit about that, how you decide that.
Yeah, for NIPR reports we stick to the top 50 population centres around the country, and the reason for that is that sure, there's going to be some good areas that are smaller than that, but they're very risky markets, and so our reports focus on markets that have a diverse economy and allows for a fluctuation in different industries. And it's great to think that we could all invest in inner city suburbs like in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth, Adelaide, but affordability is always a factor and going to be a factor in Australia. You've got apartment living closer to the city, which is a great option, but also outer ring suburbs that have new infrastructure going in for detached housing. And detached housing, whether we think that people are downsizing and a lot of that's happening or not, is still going to be a popular form of living for people in Australia.
That's right. But there's always areas within areas, and that's what you're saying. There's certain suburbs. We recommend around Logan, for example, without mentioning certain suburbs around that area, we stay out of, because it's better value, or they might have been having too many properties put in, which dilutes the market. A lot of reasons why. Then once you identify an area, you micro it down, and that's how you come up with your reports for us. Yeah.
So we really look at regional areas to start with, where we see particular regions that have strong population growth, big infrastructure projects going ahead, that sort of thing. But then we look at suburbs within those regions where there's new train lines going in, new hospitals, new schools, and those particular suburbs with not too low socioeconomic demographic are going to be good places to invest.
Sure, and couple that with a master plan community where you know that there's going to be the Woolworths and the train lines are going in. I mean, they don't just come up where they don't just put a Woolworths here and there. They do it because there's going to be growth there.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Tim. So Woolworths and McDonald's and all those big multinational companies do a hell of a lot of work where they're going to put their next grocery store or McDonald's franchise, and so it's a good indicator that they can see that there's potential in those suburbs.
What do you say? I mean, we have a lot of people, we encourage people with their research, not only to read your reports, but the Matusik and others, which we share with them, quite open about that. But their research starts with Mr. G or Google, Dr. Google, as you call him.
Professor Google.
Professor Google, there's plenty of Googles there. But people, we find, they do some research, and we commend it, we absolutely recommend it, but sometimes they can look at figures wrong. Example, vacancy rates, and they sort of...
Or yields.
Yields. Yeah. That is a complicated formulas there, or make sure you're doing the right searches. So, and that's obviously what you look for.
Yeah, well, one of the big differences with NIPR reports is we have an extensive bibliography at the end. So 50, 60, 70 different references listed in there, and exactly where, you know, a lot of them have links so that you can go to the website or to the portal where that information is located. And you know, whether it's referring to a Matusik or Terry Ryder report, we're very open about where we get our information, and we want to share that because our reports are just a foundation, a stepping stone for investors to go on and make their own inquiries.
Your investors, or they might be from Sydney or Melbourne and wanting to invest in Queensland, and they'll ring one of their family members, you know, who lives at Redbank Plains, and that family member only knows the old Redbank Plains, and they'll say, oh, hey, why would you invest here? It's full of bogans, it's full of this or that, and they've just discounted everything that Woolworths are putting in, or the train line or whatnot. So you do really need to keep yourself impartial when you do your research, and don't just listen to someone who has had a bad experience there 30 years ago, and you know, because times change, and it happens every suburb.
Yeah, the barbecue chats with the expert investor or researcher aren't really the way to go and make decisions. There's a lot of information out there, reputable sources, and it's wise to stick to those when you're making decisions.
I mean, it's an absolute gift from companies like ourselves to actually use the reports and all those other professionals to provide to people, and then you've got Mr. Google. But with that, there's enough there to do if you want to spend the time. You know, you can knock yourself out with research, but we get it all concisely done, not just on figures, but with the reasons why someone would want to live there. And it's very okay. Josh, let's cut to the chase, mate. You're a researcher. Everyone wants to know where the hotspots are going to be, you know, where all the money's going to be made. So, Josh, your hotspots would be?
Well, thanks, Tim. I think the biggest area that's looking great at the moment is Southeast Queensland in general. And so there's a lot happening down here, infrastructure. A lot of the royalty money from Gladstone projects is starting to come through, the LNG. And so over the next few years, we're going to see some major infrastructure projects come to fruition, and people are going to start to see the benefits of those, and that's going to make the property market go up.
Sure. And Southeast Queensland's also at the moment fed by the Commonwealth Games.
Yep.
There's a lot of infrastructure out in the west, in the city, Queen's Wharf, whatnot. So
the eyes are really on Southeast Queensland at the moment, from the G20 conference that we had in 2014 through to the Commonwealth Games in 2018, and then the Queen's Wharf project, which will be in 2020. And so there's a great deal happening, and that's going to bring interest and investors.
Sure. And we just live in such a great part of the world with clean food, clean water, lots of rules, regulations, and we're surrounded by water. So it's a perfect storm for people that want to come here from overseas, and if need be, the government can let them in, more in, or turn that tap off. So we're in a pretty safe environment for investing, you know, here in Southeast Queensland, or in indeed Australia across the board.
Yeah. So within the Southeast Queensland area, we see the Ipswich or Western area, Brisbane, going ahead quite strongly. There's been a great deal of demand lately, and more buyer interest in the region. And there's a lot of infrastructure in different areas of the Ipswich LGA that are going ahead.
And the LGA, the local government authority, state government, federal government, are all saying over the next 19 years, double. The whole area is going to double in population. So, and that's the government, isn't it? That's not even private person saying it.
Yeah, and so they're scrambling to keep up with that type of growth with infrastructure. So we're seeing Springfield Lakes Corporation really going ahead with another 60,000 population expected there. There's the Health City. There's a new Silicon Valley type city going in next to that. So
they're telling the $1.7 billion aged care facility.
As part of the Health City.
Amberley Air Force Base.
Amberley's expected to spend $1.5 billion over the next 20 years. So a huge growth there.
Costco just starting to get built.
Yeah. So there's a huge amount of things happening, and the other thing in Ipswich is the city centre. So council owns a lot of that land in the CBD, and they're currently demolishing the riverfront area, commercial area, and completely redoing it with $150 million.
It's just coming alive, the city centre there. Like there's a lot of quaint places to go and have coffee and whatnot. It's really. And
council's vision is going to be incorporating a lot of public space into that, so it will make it, because it's along the riverfront, it will be a very attractive place for people.
One thing I noticed, talking to people from Sydney, they can get a grip on it very quickly as to why the western suburbs, because it's happened to them down there.
They've seen it,
and they're benefiting from it.
Yeah, and it's affordability. Again, you think, well, why would people live so far from the beach? But they're on the river. There's plenty of Great Lakes and plenty of things to do, and it's affordable.
Fantastic. Any other areas, Josh, hotspots that you see?
Yeah, so The area between Brisbane, the southern corridor of Brisbane and the Gold Coast is particularly interesting at the moment. There's, of course, the Commonwealth Games is bringing a lot of attention to the Gold Coast, particularly the northern end, where Coomera is and that. There's the Coomera Town Centre, which is currently under development.
That's right.
So there's a lot of infrastructure going into that area. And again, affordability comes into it. So where in the Gold Coast, Brisbane corridor is it going to be affordable? Well, it's that area just south of Brisbane and north of the Gold Coast. So
because you get the best of everything there. You're sort of 20-25 minutes to the city, same again to the Gold Coast. You're surrounded by all the industrial estates, the road networks to the ports, to the airport.
The airport, which has got a new runway going in,
Yep.
port expansion underway. So there's a lot happening. And what's interesting about that Logan, LGA, and the Brisbane South area is that there's a lot of transport companies and transport infrastructure going in. So there's a lot of jobs in that part of that industry because of the port, because of the airport.
Years ago, we used to ask the transport companies, what's happening, because they're the ones that know, because they're getting the orders and this and that. So how well the economy's going, judged by the transport companies.
The other interesting thing about Logan is that when you talk to real estate agents on the ground and the type of people that are renting the properties there, you often get a story which is quite interesting and quite unique to that area, where one member of the couple that works on the Gold Coast and the other member in Brisbane. And so they're finding that balance where they can work in totally different cities and have the accessibility to both. So there's a lot of flexibility for people in that area, and it's affordable.
Place to be.
Yeah.
Okay, Josh, thanks for those tips.
No worries.